we've already begun our shift to cloud computing. We've started with a strategy on looking at cloud-first policy in terms of figuring out where do we move towards cloud computing in terms of thinking about areas where we're not compromising national security in any way or the privacy of the American people. An example with TSA was that they were going to spend approximately $600,000 to stand up a blog until the CIO came in and said, well, wait a second, why do we need to spend all this money on creating a blog when all this software is available online for free? Or with the Open Government Directive, part of the requirement of the Open Government Directive was to actually create a platform that would allow the American people to engage and participate in a process which allows us to figure out what we need to do to hardwire a culture of open government. Instead of going out there and building a platform agency by agency by agency, through apps.gov, GSA was able to provide a single platform that every agency was able to use, and the CIOs weren't focused on standing up that platform. Instead, what they're focused on is figuring out how do they open up the operations of their agency. The other area that we're focused on is as we move towards consolidation of data centers, is to think about where does it make sense for the federal government to move to the cloud instead of just webifying our brick and mortar institutions. It makes no sense if consolidation is nothing more than taking 10,000 servers and moving them from 10 data centers to one data center. So part of what we're trying to do in the process of consolidating data centers is to figure out where does cloud computing make sense for the federal government. A third area is around centralizing the process of certification for solutions. If you think about the economics of cloud computing, it doesn't really make sense if every cloud computing solution provider has to go out there and certify their solution with hundreds of agencies. What we need to figure out is an economic model that makes sense both for vendors and also an economic model that makes sense for agencies to be able to leverage these solutions in a way that allows them to ensure that the solution they're providing is secure, and shifting away from a culture that focuses on generating paperwork to where we're really moving towards continuous monitoring as far as security is concerned. The State Department, for example, spent $138 million over 6 years on certification and accreditation. And it was nothing more than generating paperwork. The paperwork they generated was filed away in a room that was far more secure than the very systems they were supposed to protect. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to make sure that as we move towards a centralized security model, that it also hardwires continuous monitoring so that we don't certify once and come back every 3 years to figure out whether their solutions are secure or not. In an environment where we confront threats on a daily basis, we can't afford to move to a culture that's focused on compliance and paperwork. And lastly, we need to make sure that we're establishing standards around interoperability, around data portability, and around security.